Hi. With me here, having an old slug of beer there, was Craig Basford from, we have Big Shed Brewing in Adelaide, I believe.
Correct. Yes, we do. How you going?
So, just to fill you in, anybody, we're just going to do a little short chat just with Craig, kind of get a feeling of what Big Shed is, where it came from, and what the beer scene in Adelaide is like, really, just to give us a little picture. So, Craig, maybe, do you want to just fill us in a little bit, introduce yourself there?
Yeah, sure. We're Big Shed Brewing. We've been going now for 10 years. We had our 10th birthday last October. We started out in a tiny little shed. It seemed big at the time. So we started, our brewing story goes back to an agricultural shed in the Barossa Valley with one of my best mates, Jason Harris. We pulled our resources together when we're home brewing together, as you do when you're home brew. A lot of people do it. You know, you have a few and you think, oh, I could do this for a living. This would be great. So, you wake up with a sore head and a sort of clear intention the next day. But this idea that we wanted to give it a crack wouldn't go away. And what we didn't want to do was be 70 and wondering what would have happened if we'd had a crack at it. So we started to get a bit more serious about it. We stopped drinking while we were brewing for a start. And we started working on recipes and things like that and sort of started down that road. But we got our business name together. 3 years went by. We get a renewal letter from the government. So, oh man, like we wasted pretty much 3 years just talking and sort of spinning the wheels a little bit. It's time to put this into action. So then we got a bit more serious about it again. We leased the space in Royal Park, which is in suburban Adelaide. We hired a consultant to help us design the brewery. We got the brewery straight, like we got it direct from China because we're two guys with no commercial brewing experience, no hospitality experience, and no beer sales experience. No one in their right mind is going to give us any cash. So we had to come up with creative ways to do it, and part of that was going direct to China rather than going through an intermediary. So we did that. We built our first kit, and we put our beers in. We were contract brewing as well for other people to help pay the bills. Still working full-time jobs. Jason and I would go in of a morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning, hand bottle a bunch of beer, go to work, come back, finish the job, and go back home again. So that was our very humble beginnings. But fast forward to now, we're in a new facility. In 2019, December 2019, we opened up a new brewery. We went from making around 250,000 litres of beer to around 600, and annualized out at the moment, we're sitting at around 1.1 million, which is great. We got a new front of house, new bar, all that sort of stuff. We've got enough space now for 300-400 people, whereas before we only fit 50. So we have a lot of fun in there. We have great food that goes along with the beers, and we just generally try to have a really good time.
So just going back there, I mean, you came out of this, like you said, you spent 3 years talking about it, and then you decided to go ahead. But I mean, what was the beer scene like in Adelaide at the time?
There was a few little pockets of like brew pubs and things like that. It was early stages. You know, we were like Perth was doing its thing with a couple of big breweries, being Feral and Little Creatures. Let's just shut that email off. Shut my email off there, so don't stop beeping at me. Get rid of that. There we go. But the beer scene here, I mean, there was a good craft beer scene. People were getting into their craft beers, I would say, and their independent beers and things like that. But there weren't a lot of breweries. You know, a lot of stuff was coming in from interstate and overseas. So we got in. We were probably one of the earlier breweries around the place.
Right.
And it's gone since then. It's gone gangbusters. You know, I think it's similar to at least across Australia. Breweries are popping up left and right. And the craft beer scene, people are expecting more from their craft beer, which is great because it means the market's getting more mature and people are understanding what's good and what's bad. Right. In terms of quality, you know, I always tell people that there's a massive difference between bad beer and beer you don't like, and that's what we're getting at the moment. People are understanding those two differences, which is great, right, for the most part.
Right. And what are what are the popular styles then? Like what are?
Oh yeah, it very much follows the US. You know, IPAs and hoppy pales are still big here. Because we do get quite a hot summer, like the sours and stuff do come up in the summertime and then sort of fall away again in the winter. I know people talked about, you know, sours being the next IPA, and this was, oh mate, it was 5-6 years ago. They're still talking about it, but it's not quite. It certainly has a more of a market than it used to, and I'm here for it. I love a good sour, but it's nowhere. There's still nothing on an IPA or a pale. You know, we're finding hazy pales are huge too. That's probably the big one that's come on and stayed. Is that, excuse me, that hazy style? Yeah.
Yeah.
So big hoppy beers, different varied boozes and all that.
Yeah, I wonder, like I mean, from outside the world, you know, I mean, the big, you think of Australia beer, the first thing you think of is Foster's, obviously, but then
of course,
there is this impression that there is a vibrant. At least I've seen kind of an impression that there's a vibrant.
Oh, absolutely, there is. No, there's a terrific craft beer scene here, and I think in part, you know, we owe a great debt of gratitude to sort of the foodie revolution. I think a lot of people have taken that on and now applied it to everything they might consume. You know, they want to understand the story of where it's coming from, and the wine industry. Like the wine industry is big in South Australia, and I can remember when, you know, wine was the drink of the homeless guy. Like, and now, you know, they work so hard to get Australians into their wine and to understand why terroir and all those sorts of things are special. And yeah, we walk the road that we walk the road that they plowed, and I will always be grateful for that.
Right. Well, that's interesting, the terroir, though, because does that mean that people are seeing that in the beers as well? Are people searching out local beers?
No, not in that sense, but they, you know, it's that storytelling aspect of the product. People want to know the history of the beer, not necessarily terroir, but the history of the beer, where it's coming from, who's making it, what their aims are, and it's the story behind it. It's not just a drink that you go and smash 2 dozen of and then go and have a kit. You know, it's they want to enjoy good beer the same way they want to enjoy good food and good wine.
Right. And does that translate? Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. Does that translate as well into alcohol content? Like, are people going for, if they're sipping the beers and they're appreciating more, are they kind of going for heavy, high beers that they're going to sip?
Yeah, I mean,
the summer, does that mean like it's more of a, we're going out for a few beers, so we want something?
I think it's time and place. You know, like for me right now, like I said, I've just finished. You know, I've knocked off work. My young lad's been at Surf Lifesaving, and I'm drinking like our where am I? There we go. Our Jetty Jumper there, a 3.5% pale, which I love on a day like today. You know, but tomorrow, as it turns out, is my lovely wife's birthday, and I'll be having something a bit stronger than that with friends around the place. So there's not a preference of one over the other. It's certainly situational, I think. There's some people obviously go, no, I want those big barley wines, but they don't have a session on them. That's just silly.
That's what I was thinking. Like, you know, it's because, at least to me, when craft beer started coming along, and there was a huge emphasis on the amount of alcohol. That was how they were making itself known. Like, we have the strongest beer, we have the most, and that seems to have died out a bit, and people are more.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the same thing was around, you know, IBUs and stuff like that. People want it's all marketing, isn't it? Like, people want to be the biggest or the boldest or whatever. It's just chat, and people want to they buy into that, and they'll make it and they'll try it, but that doesn't make it. I don't think that's a long lasting way, if you know what I mean. You couldn't just make, well, maybe you can, I don't know, but you couldn't. I don't think you could make just barley wines, for example, like 10-12% and survive off that, unless you were doing really good and shipping it across the world and things like that. Like you are essentially working closer to the wine industry model than you are the beer industry, I would have said.
And how does that work with your tap room then? As like you said, did you start with a tap room from the day?
No, we didn't. So when we first started, so I'll talk about, if you even talk about Brownwood Street, that's our original brewery. That was a 200 square meter brewery in a 10 hex system. We had a 50 person venue there, and it was to the point where we had to push sort of Monday, Tuesday, everything that was retail would get pushed out of the way and production would take over. And then on a Wednesday, the tide would change and all the production would and all the retail stuff would sort of kick off. So we did that we did Brownwood Street with no taps for a few months, and Jace just decided one day, like, I wasn't even here. I was in the state, but he just decided we had a little kegerator fridge. He's like we've done a lot. Let's just have a crack and see what happens. Little kegerator fridge, a few packets of chips. I think we made $300 one night, and we thought our shit didn't stink. Like, how good's this, you know? Yeah, but we've also had days where, so we were like, this is going to work. So we set up a tap room, put 6 taps in there, and we're open. I think back then we were open because Jason and I and the girls and our wives were obviously all still working full time. So we were doing Fridays and Saturdays. And we are open a Saturday. We used to open from 12 till 8, and we poured 1 beer for the day. 1 beer. And to this day, I don't know what upsets me more, whether the guy, we only got 1 person in, or the fact that the person came in, drank wine, and went, no, I'm done, I'm out. I don't know which one's more upsetting to me, to be honest. And we still talk about that day. We still talk about $7 Saturday. You know, but now we have a venue that turns over in excess of $3 million, which is amazing. And yeah, for anyone who is starting a brewery today, at least in Australia, I don't know how you could make a fist of it without having a tap room. For mine, it's 2 things. One, you know, I give you a beer, you give me cash. I don't wait 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, 60 days for a publican to pay me. I get that money per glass. I also get full retail margin per glass. And it's also the biggest brand building asset that we own. You know, we control everything. We control temperature of the beers, who serves the beers, the vessel the beers come in, the music you can hear, the food that goes with it, all of it. So if we can deliver that really good experience, and this is what we talk about at the brewery all the time, it's about memorable experiences. We don't sell beer, we sell the experience. So we do that. We give you a really good time. The next time you pick up my beer, that'll be in your head, and you'll enjoy the beer more just for that experience. So that's why it's important. So yeah, I mean, we didn't, like I said, so long and short of it is for a very short period, we didn't have a tap room, but we've had a tap room for the lion's share of what we get up to.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I was kind of coming around. I've heard a few people say that about tap rooms. I mean, in Ireland, it's actually a lot of brewery. It's very, very hard to get a tap room. The license is ridiculous. So I think that's the biggest complaint about breweries here, that they have to go retail, you know.
It's just so much, and it's a lot of fun. Like, you know, we make beer for one reason, and that's for people to enjoy. So, you know, the brewers at the end of a week where maybe everything's gone wrong, to be able to knock off at the end of the week and walk across and get a beer from the tap room and just sit and watch people enjoying all the work you put in, like that fills your coffers. You know, we in COVID, so we opened at the back end of 2019. COVID landed in April. So we went from, you know, ready to really turn this thing up to having everything shut down on us. We couldn't have anyone in the brewery, in the tap room, and all that. And obviously that has a massive impact on us financially. But to be honest, man, like, it wasn't that sucked, because I could almost make peace with that. It's like, well, we didn't stuff it up. If something goes, like, if we have to close today, well, it wasn't us. We're okay. But it was the fact that we built this space and we couldn't share it with anyone. You know, in the end, Jason and I spent 6 nights a week driving around, delivering pizza and 4-packs to punters who would order online. And I don't know who got a bigger kick out of it, like us or them. Like, they love the fact that the owners were coming out and doing this stuff. But I tell you, I love the fact that they did it, because it gave us a reason to keep pushing the next day. And I think for them, it gave them a sense of normality in what was a very abnormal time. And I'd love to, if nothing else comes out of this whole sort of clusterfuck that we're sort of getting on the back end of now, hopefully, is that there's an appreciation on both sides of the bar for the other that goes beyond the simple transaction.
Right.
You know, we mean something to these guys, and these guys mean a hell of a lot to us as well. So
Right.
I'm hoping that's how it plays out.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it sounds like if you had to choose between being a brewer or a Republican, you'd rather own the bar.
Yeah, it was funny, right? So we Jason and I, like I said, we started, and we were doing everything, brewing, selling. When we had the bar, or when we had Brownwood Street, like we're running the bar Fridays and Saturdays. But in terms of employees, and if you asked us back then why we started a brewery, is the simple answer because we love making beer. But the very first thing we gave up was making beer. We employed a brewer, and in hindsight, I look at it and go, we went and looked at it and said, well, we can run a business the way we want to run it and take it where we want to take it as best we can, or we can brew the beer and let someone else do that. And for us, there's a couple of amateur home brewers who didn't know how stupid, we're just being naive and saying, we'll give this a crack. We knew that we'll find a brewer a lot easier than we'll find someone who can tell our story and guide our story the way we want to. So that's what we did. And what I found is actually I enjoyed making beer, don't get me wrong, but it's this stuff that I'd get a kick out of. It's the sharing of the beer, the talking about beer. This is the magic, because the beer is, no one drinks beer. That's what I tell people guys. No one drinks beer in a white box in silence. We drink it with mates. Like tomorrow, I will have more than my fair share of beer with my friends, celebrating my wife's birthday. That is why beer is good, because it allows us. It puts the exclamation point on a great day or a full stop on a shit one, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, it was the same like on the day yesterday, and normally I try not to drink really during the week if I can help it. But last night, then
Absolutely.
like pick a the day just felt like it's time for a beer, like, and just. But
Absolutely,
it was nice to have, like you said, that light one for the middle of the week, that you're not like, it wasn't going to be a 4% thing that I was going to wake up this morning hungover to talk to you. But that kind of is like what you said, like the whole range and what it's for and all of that, and it is for going out and being with friends.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that's the beauty, at least in Australia, right? Like the beauty of the craft beer industry, because Australia, we've got a habit, and we've got a habit of drinking too much on occasion. But we talk about societal issues with sort of binge drinking and stuff like that. And to my mind, Australia doesn't have a drinking problem. We've got a dickhead problem. Craft beer drinkers will drink. They'll come and they'll be with friends and they'll drink, and sometimes they'll have too many. And if you say to that guy, mate, you've had too many, have some water, his words to you will be almost invariably, mate, thank you for looking after me.
Right.
But if you've got a bloke who's dead set keen on just getting written off, and you tell him he's had enough, oh, you can't tell me I haven't enough. Like, craft beer drinkers are good like that. They don't go out to get drunk. They go out to hang out with friends and have a good time. Sometimes that means you do get drunk, but that's all right. It's not the reason for being, So you can certainly do it and enjoy yourself and wake up next day a bit sore for it, but you've had a good time. That's the magic in it for me.
Yeah. And I suppose having the tap room also, like that interaction you have, like, does that dictate then what beers you're going to be brewing again? Like, I suppose you know very quickly if it's a beer that nobody's going to really like.
Yeah, it's interesting. It used to be like that. Like back in, especially when our range was really quite small. Like you'd figure out pretty quickly. People were like, have you got anything that tastes like X or Y or whatever? And you get enough people ask you that question, you go, okay, we've got to make something. Now we've got a SKU range, a core range of like 10 beers across, so we can cover most bases. But people will tell you when, like, if what's real, like, you get that conversation happening, like, oh, I tried this beer today, or I tried that beer, or or whatever. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? We'll get those conversations happening, and you do pick up on trends and things like that. And people are always happy to tell you if they love it or they don't. That's where Untapped is good for that in the best and the worst possible way. But yeah, so the long and short is they can do it. They can sort of guide what you make to a point. Again, if your range is small, you can certainly find where those gaps in the market are. But after a while, it's just it's about introducing them to something and seeing what they and getting that feedback. And so they while they may not determine what you make the first time, they'll definitely determine to some extent what you make the second time, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And do you see part of what you're doing, like trying to maybe educates too kind of. It's not the right word because it suggests you know more than other people, but it like kind of introduce people to new beers.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not education. I mean, it kind of is, I guess, but it's just it's illumination, or it's just showing like here's what we've got. You know, I guess it is an education in a sense, but it's not that. I certainly don't. It's certainly not. You know, us here, you there. That's what I will.
Yeah,
I take strong issue with that because. So Jason and I, we met at Wolf Blass, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, massive winery here. And so we worked in IT, never touched a glass of wine for anyone like other than to drink it. And we would go to a fair few wine shows, launches and stuff like that. And the winemaker, man, love them, but they would talk down to people. Like it was almost like, you know, that pearls before swine type conversation. Like you can't possibly taste what I taste, but I'm going to explain it to you anyway. I remember nudging Jace and say, look, if we ever talk like that to anybody, punch me in the face, because it's straight across the table. If you taste, like you drink one of our beers and you tell me you taste something and I don't taste it, I tell people like you are 100% right, because it's your tongue and it's your nose and it's, you know, it's your receptors. You taste it. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Just because I don't taste it doesn't say anything. All I really care about is, do you like it? You know, so I'd never tell someone they were wrong. I'd say, oh, that's interesting. I don't pick that up. And they'll sit back and you can sort of, because it's a bit intimidating for reasons I don't understand. But if you can then just explain to people, no, I taste different things, but that's totally okay. You can actually watch them relax and then come forward again. And now we can chat.
Yeah.
Because they've been validated. You know, that's what people don't want. That we're social creatures. We don't want to rock the boat. So if you can get people comfortable talking about, and then suddenly it all comes out, and they may pick up something that you don't, and it makes the beer better for you knowing that's there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that there is an awful lot of snobbery, I guess, around a lot of the craft beer thing. Not so much in the brewers. I haven't found it in the brewers, but a lot of people who come in and they just, you know, they've started drinking it, and it is. I don't understand it either, but it is.
Yeah, no, there's two types for mine. There's craft beer nerds who are lovely, and craft beer wankers who we can just do without. Like the craft beer nerd is happy to share with you all the things that they know, but it's not big noting. Whereas the beer wanker will try and do that, like big note themselves. And I'm like, that's where I sort of like I don't buy into that by any stretch.
And do you have any way of kind of filtering them out before they get into the tap room?
Nah, we just let them go. It's all right. And then they'll normally say something silly, and you'll just say, oh, well, actually, you know, whatever it might be. And yeah, fair enough.
So you said you have 10 taps. What kind of range of beers do you brew? Is it
so I mean our core range, like we've got our Jetty Jumper, which I'm having now, our Australian Pale, our Cold Shizzle, we've got our Lager, our RPL, got a American Pale, our FEA American Pale, Californicator, West Coast IPA, got a Hoppy Brown Ale, Dessert Stout, and a couple of different types of cider is our sort of core range.
Okay.
And now lately a hard lemonade, which has been good.
Okay. Yeah, they never really took off here at all.
Yeah. It's having a thing, like it's having a life. It's interesting. Hard seltzer is a big thing over there.
No,
They
were trying to push them. All right, thought they were going to be the next big thing, but they don't seem to have taken off at all.
Yeah, that's been interesting to watch because, like, as an Australian, like we've had what we call RTDs, like ready to drink. So you know, your Jim Beam and Coke, Jackson Coke, that sort of stuff, for years. And I know they tried to shift them into the US for a while and never did it. But all of a sudden, hard seltzers took off like that was something, and we're like, it's just vodka and flavoring. Like, you might brew it, but that's essentially all it is. You know, they're relatively big here in patches. We have one. We've got an orange and passion fruit, which goes well. It's good in the brewery, but we don't. It's more of a side project than a. It is core range, but we don't. We don't invest a lot of time in getting new flavors and styles out. This is what we do. This is for that person. Again, in the brewery, you know, we get a big array of people now. Like back in the day in Brownwood Street, it was the craft beer nerd would be our core market. Our American Pale would outsell everything else 2-1. easy. And last year, for the first time, our lager was our top selling product in the tap room, which is huge. It speaks to me about the changing demographic that we attract, at least in the brewery, which is amazing. Like if we can get those guys who only drink lagers to come in and try our version of it, in 6 months' time, they might go, oh, what's your pale like? I'll give that a crack, and away we go. And we'll slowly introduce them to new things, and that's the big thing for me. Like I'm all for everyone, by all means, like try my product and tell me you don't like it, no issue. Tell me you don't like beer, that's like saying you don't like solids. Like there's a lot of different types that we can talk about. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you don't like my beer, that's okay. But if you say, oh no, I don't drink beer, I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Like, we've got everything from sours that taste like cider, got a real sort of cider component to it, to a stout that tastes like an ice block, like a golden daytime it's called, which is a chocolate honeycomb toffee sort of ice on a stick. It's an iconic Australian thing. It sounds really wrong, but it's bloody delicious.
Okay, take your word for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose
you can't have napalm on your own. That was the catchphrase back in the day. It was amazing.
Okay. Must admit, it has never made its way up here. But yeah, I like to just mention the lager there. Do you think, because I suppose where I'm going from is like having a tap room, then I think, am I right in thinking that you probably have to have a lager because that's what gets people in the door?
No, you don't have. No, you don't have to. You certainly don't have to. I mean, we do, but it wasn't one of the first things that go on to our. Yeah, you want to have something for the person who only drinks that. Like so, before that, we had our Australian Pale, which is based loosely on a Kolsch, so it's kind of that easy drinking style. So you introduce them to that, and you could, especially at Brownwood Street, the original, you could spot them a mile away. Like so, you've got 6 blokes, all in their high-vis, all tradies, and 4 of them will be craft beer heads, and they're quite comfortable in their surrounds. And there will be 2 guys who are clearly not. They're looking around, suspect, like where's the, why aren't I watching the Warrigal Dogs on the big screen over here? Where's my Keno and all that sort of stuff? And they're like, look. And they'll eyeball you. I love it. They're like, I don't drink that fruity shit. So what do you got? I'm like, all right, man, we'll try this. This is our Cold Shizzle. And Cold Shizzle was named in part after an Australian band called Cold Chisel, Jimmy Barnes and things like that. So we dub it our working class pale. And so they see that. They have a bit of a smile on their face because they get the references and things like that. And they drink the beer. And then they'll look at you and they're like, yeah, it's pretty good, I guess. No, not pretty good, no. It's okay. And then they'll have 12. And you're like, all right, that's good enough. So you don't need to, but you can certainly, it's all about developing that trust with the customer and letting them know it's okay to hate it. Once they know that, they're a lot more comfortable trying stuff. If you try it and if you get judgy when they don't like it, well, then they're going to not try it because it's easier. But if you're like, yeah, you don't like it, that's cool, man. Let's find something else. One of my favorite things to do is if you get that person who's like, I don't drink beer. Like, well, what do you drink? And they'll tell you, red wine or whatever. Like, what is it about it? Let's talk about what it is you like. And it might be, I like that fruity characteristic. All right, what fruity characteristic? Okay, done. I can find a beer here that has got something similar to it. Like I remember this young girl coming in and she's like, I don't drink beer. It was late in the night, so I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like we've got some wine here, do that. And her boyfriend at the time, or partner, whoever she was with, he was drinking our Big Ripper, which is our rye double IPA, like a 9+% like beer essence. And she'd had a couple of wines by this stage, and she said, "Oh, can I try that?" to him. And I'm watching it across the bar, and I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be interesting. You tell me you don't like beer. Like you're about to get beer syrup. Let's see how you go." She's like, "Oh, that's all right." And I had to interrupt and I said, "Whoa. Hang on a minute. You like that? Yeah, it's really fruity and da-da-da. All right, cool. Now we'll find something. Now we have a trust. Let's go." In the end, she settled in on like our Jetty Jumper, like I said, our 3.5% up, because it's not. When people say, as an Australian anyway, if you tell me you don't like beer, what they're normally saying is, I don't like mass-produced Australian lager, which is fine. So let's find something that you do like. So we start, let's pull that thread of what do you like in a red wine? What do you like in the bourbon? What is it you're drinking that's tickling your fancy? Let's see if we can find that thread somewhere else and see how we go. And once you start doing that, and like I said, you do it without judgment, people get into it. So you don't necessarily have to have anything. You got to be able to find those little links that they'll go, all right, this guy is not a complete idiot. We'll trust him and we'll try it and we'll see what happens.
And do you think, I'm just thinking here, that the actual phrase craft beer, do you think that's, where does that stand now? Because it seems to be, it is an awful lot of people just very bitter hops, or very exclusive kind of community. I know a lot of people are kind of using independent beer or independent breweries.
Yeah, and that comes more from less about what craft beer was, but it's more to do with, the big boys trying to trick people, essentially. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The big chains here anyway in Australia, like the Coles and the Woolworths and things like that, they'll spin up their own brands,
right? And
they'll get them made en masse, and they'll pump it out at a price cheaper than we can, but with a faux craft label and things like that. So that's why in Australia, like we've gone from sort of the craft beer industry to independent brewers, because that's something you can't. It's easier to defend.
Yeah,
it's harder to sort of wash over a brand and call it independent. And there's a bit of education around that for the public. When independent breweries get bought by the Lion Nathans of the world and the Asahis of the world, they do everything they can to keep that, not keep it from people as such, but they certainly don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And even I will talk to people and they're like, oh, what do you mean Pirate Light's owned by Japan? Yeah, they bought out like years ago. Oh, I didn't know that. And for some people that's a big deal, and some people it's not. And that's totally cool. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't buy stuff from big box stores and whatever. But let's be straight with people. Like, we as a brewery, always our preference. We won't necessarily. We don't think for a second that we're the best brewery on the planet, because that's completely subjective sort of conversation to be having. We'll be the best brewery we can, absolutely. But no one has to be, no one, we don't have to be any less honest. We can be 100% honest all the time. So that's what we try to do. Win, lose or draw, we will be straight with people. Right. And I think that's the important bit. I think that's what people enjoy seeing, and that's what they support, is that honesty and that lack of spin. Like in Australia, people got a good bullshit detector, right? They can pick up on stuff and they're like, nah, man, like I'm calling that out. And what they don't get with us, for better or worse, is they don't have to worry about that, because I'm not smart enough to be a good liar.
Fair enough. So so where do you think where's Big Shed going, and where's the market they're generally going? Are you going to just keep
Yeah, we're looking, so we're relatively well known in South Australia. What was interesting, like we have the Royal Show, which is the big agricultural show historically, and now it's rides and all that sort of stuff. It's a great 10 days. But anyway, we'd never been to the Royal Show as Big Shed as a stand and things like that. If you asked me beforehand, I would have said like 8 out of 10 people who come to see it would know us, at least heard of us. But the amount of people who had no idea who we are was humbling and amazing in equal measure, because it means we've got because we're pretty well. We do okay, like in our home state, but we've still got so much more to go, which I really appreciate, because once we get over that and get more well known and get more distribution points and things like that, it's going to be even better. And again, and that's much of a muchness for the rest of Australia. We want to really spread our South Australia being central. We really want to spread that national base. And we've just started a couple of exploratory sort of export conversations. We did export into the Netherlands, which went out through Europe. That was before COVID. COVID sort of put the kibosh on that, but we'll revisit that. Getting into Southeast Asia, like a bit closer to home, is probably our next steps, and just absolutely making our brewery, our tap room, and that like just a cathedral to what we get up to and what we're about. I can't tell you how much I love that space and seeing people enjoy it. So being able to focus on that and deliver ideas and events, and be it local music or whatever it might be, creating a space where our community can come and enjoy is something I get a massive kick out of. I'm always an advocate for the community has to be better for Big Shed being in it. Otherwise, there's no point. Because without a strong community, Big Shed falls over.
Right.
That's the long and the short of it.
And
yeah.
Yeah. So that community thing, then would that mean that like your current tap room is kind of like your real focus, or do you want to open more tap rooms? But then
I don't. Yeah, some more retail, not necessarily tap rooms with breweries. I don't think, because we seem like it's just too capital intensive, to be honest. And we've got capacity at our current site. Like we make around, like I said, we've got an annualized number of about 1.1 at the moment. We can make 3.2 million litres before we sort of max that out. So I don't see much point in setting up another brewery until I'm doing that, unless it's far enough away, of course. But yeah, additional retail space is something we're looking into. But it is more of that slow burn type thing, like getting more distribution points, within South Australia, interstate, and then international underpins some of that stuff, and then being able to pick and choose where we go. But again, like if we open a bar in a new space, I want to make sure that we're delivering for those guys what they need. Like what we do at Rural Park isn't necessarily going to fit exactly the next spot. Right. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. Like I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm not going to have the same menu. It's going to be a menu that reflects the people and like the beers may be similar. The core range will obviously be there, and there may be some different limiteds and stuff that we brew, but the space's look and feel and the people who work it will reflect the community that it's in. That's super important to me.
Right. So it's not just like a McDonald's Big Shed brand.
No.
Drops.
No. I don't see that. I mean, I just don't see that working. I know Brewdog do something like that. I'm not sure how much change and stuff they do. I've been to a couple of their places. It seems a bit samey for me, but and I understand that to some people there's a comfort in that. But for me, if I travel, like I don't want to go to McDonald's in Spain or or whatever. Like I want to experience, the local stuff is the good stuff. So to me, yeah, we got to make sure the experience is being delivered for the locals, because tourists are amazing, don't get me wrong, and new people to the venue who are coming from far and wide are amazing, but it's the locals who will be there, who support you every day or every week. They're the ones, they're your make or break. Yeah. That's the ones that you really want to impress and make sure you keep them engaged and on your side, because they'll be your strongest advocates.
Yeah. No, and that just mentioning the tourist thing there, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, like beer tourism, it's quite a big thing. Do you get a lot of tourists coming in just because they ask where's the local brewery or things like that?
Absolutely, yeah, we do, and we get them. Once it's funny, like you can tell, like at the moment in Adelaide, the Tour Down Under's on, so the big bicycle race. So we'll get a little influx, a little bounce in tourism trade. Like you'll hear different accents around the place, and the cricket, Adelaide cricket is a huge one. Okay. For internationals, and then the local Aussie rules will get the interstate tourists will come through, and for us, like I said, it's all about that experience, and delivering that moment for them. Like we have a brew day, what we call our brew day experience, at the bar, where people can come in and make beer with us. They can sit there on, and we bought when we first started a brew kit, a Sabro brew kit, which is the same gear that Dogfish Head started on, and they were heroes of ours. We were like, well, if that's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So that's what we got. And one of our brew team will take a team of people through the brewing process in this little nano setup, and then we'll ferment, and we'll ferment the beer, keg the beer, and in 3 or 4 weeks' time, that beer will be on tap at our bar, and they can come and drink it with their mates and go, I made this beer.
Right.
And it's the most fun. They get such a kick out of it. And it reminds me of why we did it in the first place, because it is that moment of like, I've created this thing, I've created some art, and I push it out into the world, and let's see what happens. And I'll tell them, like it's good fun. I told them, one of the guys were making a lager. They were making this sort of hoppy lager the other day, and I said, well, what, walk up to the guys, hey guys, how you going? Yeah, good. I said, what are you making? Oh, we're making this lager. Oof, lager? They're like, yeah. I said, mate, there's nowhere to hide. Don't fuck it up. And just walked off and just left them doing, what's going to happen? you know. But it's part of the magic for them. Like they get to feel that sense of I've done everything I can do, you know, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to put it out in the world, and I'm going to see what happens. And you know, when you land it, it's the best. It's the biggest kick. It's great. So in terms of tourism, they're more local guys, but interstaters come through and do it as well. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds like that's the whole. I mean, you've got your finger on, like, it is, beer is fun, and just, you know,
Absolutely, yes.
People are looking for
absolutely, it. Yes. I tell people, I tell our guys all the time, we don't solve world diplomatic issues. We make booze. Let's have fun with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the best attitude to have, I think. So listen, I won't hold you much longer. Is there anything I forgot to ask you there that you particularly wanted to mention?
No, I don't think. Oh, look, I'll tell you what though. Like, thank you so much for having me. And if you can't tell me that beer is in the best industry, like, how often am I going to spend 7:30 on a Friday night on a lovely warm night talking to a amenable Irishman? Like, this is the best, right?
And having a beer.
And having a beer while I'm doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is one thing. I think there is one thing that if anybody who is supposed
to be clear, or am I? Here we go. It is 7:30 p.m. just to be absolutely sure.
Well, I only have coffee because it's only early morning here yet.
I'm that.
But no, but I think it's like you capture exactly, like, every brewer is in it that I've seen anyway. Maybe not in the big breweries, but you know, every independent brewer is just in it for its passion. It's just they love talking, love brewing, just love meeting people, and
absolutely. No, and that's why it's fun. You know, like, because we are very. It is. It's an absolute. You don't do it to get rich. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that's the other thing I keep hearing.
But it's such a passion project, and like I said, to be able to, like, I'll never have the patience to learn guitar. I will never ever be a singer. But this is my little piece of artwork. Now, I don't necessarily make it directly anymore, but it is our art, and we send it out, and to see people enjoy it, it's a rush like I can't explain. I love it.
Right. Let me just. Sorry, I should have just done this. Should have put this up here a while ago. And a second, just so people can find you. I should have put that up there so that they could find you. It's Big Shed up here. I forgot all about it. It looks like I'm part of the company now. So if I ever come down there, I want a couple of free beers.
Done.
So listen, Craig, thanks a million for talking to me. Like I said, I'll try and get this out next week. And hopefully if anyone's popping down Adelaide way, they'll pay you a visit now, because it's maybe make their own beer as well. And then
buddy. Sounds like a fun time, mate. Appreciate it, eh?
All right, listen, thanks a million. I'll just finish this with that video again, just to say goodbye. And thanks a million. And hopefully we'll have get to talk to some more people from Australia or from around the world. We've been focused on Europe.
Well, if you need some contacts, mate, give me a yell, and I can point at least the local guys or some interstaters as well. I'm sure I can get someone who can talk to you.
Excellent, thanks. All right, listen, Craig, thanks a million, and enjoy the rest of the beer and the rest of the evening.
Will do, mate. Take it easy.
All right.